Welcome. In this video, I will be discussing the student engagement technique called Jigsaw. A summary of this technique is described in our text, Student Engagement Techniques, a handbook for college faculty. Jigsaw can help the instructor to motivate students and workshop participants to hold themselves accountable to learn a concept well enough so that they can teach it to other participants in the class or the workshop. First, the instructor picks a topic and divides it into subtopics. Next, you split your class into home teams. The number of home teams you have should equal the number of subtopics that you've created. You assign one subtopic to each group member. The next step is to split your home team up into expert groups, which is one group per subtopic. In these expert groups, workshop participants will work together to prepare insights and resources on their assigned topic. These expert groups should also define ways to help others learn the material. Once this is complete, students will return to their home team, and when they're in their home teams, each member will teach the material related to their topic. The final step in the Jigsaw engagement technique is to get your participants to return to their expert groups and debrief on how it went teaching their subtopic. Why did I choose this particular student engagement technique? I'm a sales trainer, and my job is to train sales representatives on different sales strategies and techniques with hopes that they're going to use them in the field long after the workshop. One of the biggest challenges that I face, as well as my colleagues in this industry, is that we have workshops where our sales representatives are incredibly engaged. They seem to understand the concepts, but then either forget them or they're not using them in the real world. So when I read this assignment, I figured that I would start searching for a student engagement technique that can promote long-term retention in hopes that long-term retention can lead to better use of this skill set in the real-world environment. I read a journal article called Exploring the Role of Peer Learning in Enhancing Knowledge Retention Among Adult Learners. And this article talked about a study by Ruby Singh and Harold Castro. And in the study, they found that when compared to other instructional strategies, adult students who participated in peer learning techniques and collaborative learning techniques had a better long-term retainment of the subject matter. And as a result, they were able to apply the skills more effectively in a real-world environment. So after I was able to read a study that backed up my hunch that collaborative learning would result in better long-term retainment, I started to do a little bit more research about effective collaborative learning techniques. In a 2023 blog post from Assembly Admin's adult education website, they refer to Jigsaw as one of the most effective collaborative techniques that they've used. So I thought I would study this more in our curriculum text. And I found that this technique would work for me specifically in my workshops because it's easy for me to create categories and subcategories given that I have an extensive knowledge of the subject matter. I also have a really good knowledge of the different skill sets within my classes because I've worked with these individuals for quite a while. So I'm able to effectively split up the groups with people with enough subject matter to help lead the discussions with what they're going to be teaching. What are some advantages and disadvantages for me using the Jigsaw technique with sales representatives? One of the first advantages that I came up with when I was doing my research was that if I am dividing up my groups effectively, I can actually utilize and tap into the vast experience that I have with more of our senior sales rep when it comes to length of service and experience. And that's only going to help collaboration within the classroom. And it's also going to help get the buy-in from some of our more senior experienced sales reps, which can sometimes be a challenge. Another advantage is that this technique gives me an opportunity as an instructor to be able to assess the team's knowledge of the subject matters that they're teaching. Now, while it might not be an official assessment technique, as an instructor, by walking around and listening in on some of the discussions and watching some of the teaching presentations, as well as watching and hearing some of the comments made during debriefing sessions, I can get a good idea of whether the groups are grasping the knowledge effectively so that they can use it at a later date. Now let's talk about some of the disadvantages to this technique. One of the disadvantages is that there's potential to not have enough of a range of experience in my workshops. I don't have the ability to choose who attends my workshops. Often this is, I might have a specific team or a specific group of people. Now this could work out really well if I have a good balance of newer sales reps with lower experience and a good balance with more experienced sales reps. But if I end up with a class full of sales representatives that are either mostly brand new in their role or mostly experienced, it can make the collaborative learning process a little bit more challenging. Another disadvantage to the jigsaw technique as it applies to my practice is that I don't think it would be an effective tool to use if I'm teaching technical hands-on skills, specifically to using our sales software and our programs. And the reason for this is I have found that I am most successful in teaching technical skills where I demonstrate the task and I show the whole class what I'm doing. And then I do the task again a second time, but in this situation, the class will actually tell me what direction to go and how to do it. And then lastly, I'll have them actually do the technical skill themselves so that I can observe and assist where there's issues that come up. There's a lot of technical training in my role as well. So I don't feel that the jigsaw technique would be as helpful or useful when teaching technical skills. Now I'm going to talk about the role of the instructor or the facilitator, as well as the role of the students or the workshop participants when I'm using the jigsaw student engagement technique. So what I did for this section is I read in depth the description of this technique in the curriculum's text, Student Engagement Techniques, a handbook for college faculty. And based on what I read as far as the steps in the process, here's what I summarize as for the role of the instructor. So it's very important that the instructor chooses an effective category and subcategories for the subject matter and for this particular technique, or else it may not promote a collaborative work or learning environment. The instructor should also split the teams up effectively into groups, and I've talked about this a little bit more in this assignment as far as ensuring that you have the right level of experience and dynamics in each group to also help promote the collaborative process. The instructor also will need to properly explain the purpose of using this collaborative techniques, why we're doing it, and clearly outline the instructions so that the participants know exactly what they're doing so that they don't have to worry about the process. They can just hone in on the actual task at hand. It's also important that the instructor walks around the room and observes. This allows the instructor to assess whether the students are understanding the subject matter and also understanding how to do this particular project and are following instructions properly. It's also very important that the instructor wraps up the activity by holding a class discussion so that the instructor isn't absolving responsibility. We don't want to give the students, the participants, the idea or the impression that the instructor is passing the teaching on job to them. So as an instructor facilitator, it's really important to wrap up the activity by promoting a class discussion about the topic. Now, the role of the students. It's really important that the students research and study their subject properly so they can learn it well enough to teach it, which is the second part of their role, is actually teaching the subject matter to their teams. Students are going to have to collaborate and they're going to have to work together. So it's very important that they are effectively collaborating by taking advantage of the experience levels of their colleagues within their group. So that concludes my instructional strategies report. I hope you found this insightful. Thank you very much for watching.